Hello, hi, welcome to Cloud Technologies. In this video, we are going to discuss what is API-led connectivity in MuleSoft, which is the most important one and primary one when you are facing any MuleSoft interview, or even in development also you need to make sure what is API-led connectivity to implement this. So let's discuss this in this video. Before that, if you are visiting our channel for the first time, please subscribe, share, and like our Cloud Technologies, and please press the bell icon so that you will get notified whenever we uploaded a new video. You won't miss any updates. And we are sorry we took some time to upload these videos due to this pandemic, and from now onwards, we will try to upload videos very fast for your convenience. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so without wasting any time, let's get into the topic today. So today we are going to discuss about what is API-led connectivity. Okay, so in MuleSoft, we are actually going to implement a lot of APIs, right? Because this is an integration platform, we are going to integrate a couple of APIs. Everything is an API. It may be SOAP API or REST API, regardless of those SOAP or a REST API, everything almost API. So what is this API-led connectivity? Is this a new technology or a tool or something else? Right? So let's discuss this. So API-led connectivity is not it's not any tool or a technique something. This is just a method or an approach. This is just an approach, just like a formula, to connect data and applications through couple of reusable and purposeful APIs. So if you are pointing out this first point, okay, so just remember these two words. We will get into details going forward. Okay, so we have a lot of APIs. We have, for example, we have 10 different APIs. We need to share the data between these APIs, okay, and connect these applications together by using these reusable purposeful APIs. Okay, and what is API-led connectivity? It's a kind of like a microservice kind of stuff. Like instead of building everything into a single API, we will segregate the purpose of a particular business logic into one API, system data connection in one API, experience of that user into another API. Like that, we will segregate different APIs and we will connect them together to achieve some requirement. Okay, so why what is the use of this and what is the advantage of this is like we have different APIs. Okay, so is there any change, any modification, any change need to be done in any one API? Maintain a separate logic into a separate API. So if any same requirement acquire in future, you no need to build that API from scratch. You can just directly reuse this API from your asset. Okay, and if you can go through these points, see, API-led business model is a fundamental change. It's thinking on how business engage their partners and customers through APIs, because we have a lot of APIs to build on. By using all these APIs, it is very easy to maintain their assets for a particular organization, to share their assets. Okay, you will get to know once we will see all the layers and everything. At the end of this video, you will get to know what I meant by these points. Okay, so yeah, so let's get into the details. API-led connectivity is built on three different layers approach. Okay, and don't get confused and don't expect like these three layers are to be visible somewhere, or these to be configured somewhere like that. It's just an API. We are just naming it the three different layers of APIs by using their purpose. Okay, so in API-led connectivity, we have three different layers. Okay, experience layer, process layer, system layer, but we will go from bottom to top. Okay, because system layer is the one which is the primary one and which is the most important one and mandatory layer for any API. Okay, so we will come in this way: system layer, process layer, and experience layer. But why we put experience layer on the top? This is the API which we are going to expose to your end users. Okay, so let's discuss one by one. Okay, So, and again I am repeating, don't expect these layers are visible somewhere in your MuleSoft environment, or we don't need to configure anything separately for this. Okay, system layer, nothing but system API. This is just an API, just a normal REST API, but we will name it as a system API because the purpose of this API is to connect the data from another database end system or something. Okay, so let's see what is system layer. So this is the main layer. In any API, in any API implementation, you should have at least one system layer, system API, because this is the main one which will connect to that actual end systems and get the core data, raw data. Okay, because for example, if you are going to implement a Salesforce to database integration, okay, to connect to the database and get the data from that data, we need to build an API that is called system API. To connect to Salesforce and to connect the data, to get the data from that Salesforce or push the data to the Salesforce, we need to connect to the Salesforce endpoint, actual endpoint, right? So that is a separate API we are going to build. That is another system API. That is Salesforce system API, and this is database system API. So like that, whenever you are going to interact with any actual in data system to get the data from that actual system, you need to build an API, and we need to name it as a system API. And this system API never ever exposed to the client because the actual raw data is available here. So we should not expose this system API or system layer to end users. This is only developers' purpose, like our purpose. We are going to build the system API, process API, and we know we should not provide the system API, process API details to the end users. End users means who are going to utilize your application, who are going to consume your application or your API into their services. So we should not provide these two details to end users. Okay. So the system API is nothing but the API which is actually connecting to the actual system to get the raw data. Okay, then process layer. So for as in our example, we are integrating Salesforce to database, right? So we have two system APIs. One is one system API to connect to the Salesforce and get the push the data. Another system API is to connect to the database to read and write the data to database. So these two are two different system APIs. Then what is process layer? So on top of your system API, you can have process layer. Because again, these three are three different APIs. That's it. We are just going to connect these three different APIs in a meaningful way. We will see that. So process API is nothing but it is actually to combine the two or three more, two or more different system APIs based on the purpose of the data which you are going to use. See, for example, we have Salesforce system API, we have database system API, but we need to fetch some data from database and some data from Salesforce, and we need to do some transformations. We will provide the transformated output JSON to your end user. So in that way, you will have one process API, and in that process API, you can just invoke these two system APIs and do the transformations and everything, and deliver this data to your experience layer. That's it. So the actual business logic, actual transformation, filtering, aggregating, routing, everything, the transformations, everything will reside in process API layer. So in your system API, you are just going to connect to that particular system and get the raw data. Send that raw data as it is to the as a response. That's it. In process layer, if needed, if you need to combine two or more system APIs, you need to invoke all the four system APIs and get the raw data or response data from all the four system APIs and combine them, transform the data into the required format of that client, and send that as a response to experience API. Okay, that is the use of process API. So if you in your project, if you have any requirement like to combine any two different APIs, do some transformations, send the data into JSON format or XML format, you need. Okay, and the last layer is experience API. You will invoke the system API into process API into experience API. So this is the one, the experience API. We are going to expose this to our end users or clients. For example, if any Salesforce team need to consume your MuleSoft API, you need to provide this endpoint. You need to provide experience API endpoint to that Salesforce team. They will consume your API, and internally this experience API will invoke process API and system API. So it will get data from system API, it will do the transformations, and all the transformed final output will send to experience API. So this API you will provide this to your end users. So your end user will invoke this experience API and they will get the data out of it. But internally it will invoke all these two APIs. Okay, so don't get confused. We will see one example so that you will get more clarity about it. Okay, so in this experience API, because we are going to provide this endpoint to the different users, the end users, we need to make sure our experience API is more secure. So by using our API policies or any OAuth authentication or any other API policies, we need to secure our experience API with HTTPS endpoint and with all the policies or with OAuth or token or any other token generation technique as per your project requirement. So you need to make sure your experience API is more secure before deliver this endpoint to your client. And is this API will consume by different audience, like this experience API is different from mobile to web application. For example, let's take Facebook or net banking. You Let's take HDFC Bank. Okay, you have an app in mobile, so the look and feel of that mobile app is different, and the look and feel of that HDFC net banking while you log in through browser in your laptop is different, right? So like that, different audience, like web application or mobile application, different audience consumed your experience API. So in that case, if they need any specific validations or any specific transformations to that particular API for this process API response, those kind of validations or those kind of transformations you will do in experience layer. Though because different users consume this experience API, so in this experience API you will have different flows. One is for mobile application, one is for web application, and you can do that validations and all. You can deliver this to client, but the actual business logic is resides in process API. The actual raw data is resides in system API. Okay, so this end user who are going to consume this experience API, they won't have access to modify this business logic or modify this system API. So your APIs are, your raw data is more secure in that case as well. Okay, so that is about the three layers: system API, process API, and experience API. Let's see more details about this. Okay, so okay, in this case, okay, yeah. So in this case, what is the advantages of this API-led connectivity? As we divided these APIs into three different layers, multiple APIs, okay, we can reuse these APIs whenever the same requirement occurs in your project. So that is the one primary advantage. Primary advantage of your API-led connectivity is reusability. So it will reduce overall integration costs, because if one project requires some, for example, logging or error handling, we can build this logging or error handling as separate REST APIs. We will utilize the same API in any other integration projects which you are going to work on MuleSoft inside your organization, within your organization. So they no need to build that APIs again from scratch. So they can just reuse it. That will reduce the overall cost, development, integration cost, everything it will reduce. For example, so like that, if any same API is available in the your internal organization, you no need to build it again. You can just reuse it. So that is the primary advantage of API-led connectivity. Okay. Yeah. Another one is like identify operation and monitoring requirements. It means like for experience layer, you are going to apply all these SLAs and security policies or any other non-functional requirements. Also, you are going to apply on experience API. But for system and process API, you don't need to do anything because those are internal to our organization. We are not going to expose system and process APIs. Okay, so in that way, we are going to segregate what are the operation and monitoring requirements, what are the function non-functional requirements. So that is one of the advantage. And another thing is layering of APIs increases control over all the integration efforts, because we have different system APIs, different process APIs, different experience APIs, and we will aware of that, which one is going to modify in case of any change needed. So we have all the complete control on one end-to-end integration. So in case of any defects or any enhancements needed, any defects occur, we have complete control on these APIs to save some time to fix that efforts, defects and all. Okay, so this will save a lot of efforts, and it will help the organization to segregate their assets as we discussed earlier. So in organization, if they have a lot of system APIs, process APIs, and experience APIs, they will just segregate them into different APIs so that they can reuse it whenever the need comes. And and as we all know, these all APIs are loosely coupled, as we discussed. We segregated this into different APIs. Loosely coupled means if any change we did in one API, that won't affect that another API. So there is no point-to-point connection implemented here. So this is very easy to modify whenever the change is needed. So these are the couple of advantages of API-led connectivity. And another few points to be noted here, because some confusion will be there for the freshers who are going to hear this API-led connectivity for the first time. So just for them, I just noted down few points here to make them more clarity. Okay, so this is not a technology, and this is not a thing. I mean, API-led connectivity. Okay, we no need to see, we are not going to see these layers anywhere. We are just going to implement different APIs, different REST APIs, just we have did for any other REST API, and we will name this API in a meaningful way, such that if it is a system API, process API, or experience API, based on the purpose of that API, we are going to name that API. That is the one point you need to be remember. And it's not mandatory to have all three API layers in each and every integration. For example, if in your organization you are into a project, in that project you no need to implement all the three layers, system, process, or experience API, three layers you no need to implement for your particular integration, because the requirement of that API will depends upon the number of vendor I mean number of the vCores they have as per their license. That is one thing. And another thing, if there is no transformation needed for that integration, for example, system API is mandatory for each and every integration, that is for sure. But that process API or experience API, among them, few integrations, few projects need both the process and experience API based on their requirements, and few don't need. Why? Because, for example, if one project or one integration need to get the data from the system as it is, then there is no business logic, there is no transformation. So what layer we can avoid here? Business logic transformations will reside in process layer. So we can avoid this process API. We can directly implement the experience API on top of your system API, and we can expose that experience API to your end users. So in that way, we can eliminate process API. And in some cases, we are just going to publish the transformations into some any queue, any point time queue, or Amazon SQ, Amazon queue, something. Because it means like you no need to do any your end users won't have any UI, any experience kind of stuff. So in that case, you can eliminate experience API. You can just do the process API, and you can do the transformations and all. You can just publish this that output JSON to some queue wherever your project requires. So that's there the API led connectivity ends. So it depends, like based on your project requirement, or based on your infrastructure. Like if you have all the vCores required vCores are there for you to deploy all these three APIs, like that, based on your infrastructure and based on your project requirements, based on your client requirement, you are going to have all these three layers. But this is not mandatory to have the three layers, but MuleSoft will support segregate this. MuleSoft will suggest segregate all your integrations into these kind of three different layers to maintain it easily. System API is mandatory for each and every API. Remaining two or it depends. Okay, so don't get confused. If you won't see these three layers in your project, don't get confused. That is not API connectivity. That is also API connectivity approach, but depends on your project. They will eliminate one of the layer. Okay, see, and how these three layers are going to be invoked in one another. That would be the first question coming to your mind as if you are a fresher, if you are hearing this first time. Okay, so that we will see. This third point we will discuss with an example. Okay, and implement all SLA security policies and any private port, any HTTP, DLBs, everything we are going to implement in experience API, experience layer, that will provide more security to your API. We no need to implement. We no need to worry about. More for security point of view for your lower layers like system API and process API. You no need to worry about the more security kind of stuff. There should be a security. We will implement just an SSL handshake or any other low level security. That would be better. That would be fine. But your experience API, you need to be more careful because you are going to expose that experience API to your end users. So you need to be make sure each and every aspect of your security to be maintained in experience layer before deliver that endpoint to your client. Okay, and again stop adding unnecessary layers if there is no need for it. If you don't have any UI, just eliminate the experience API. If you don't have any business logic or any transformations, just eliminate process API. Go for system and experience API like that. Okay. Let's try to understand this more clear way in some example. So, for example, if you have Salesforce, SAP, and database integration in your project, so what you are going to do for all the real-time systems, like where you are going to get the raw data. In our example, you have three different systems: SAP, Salesforce, and database. So you should have these three different system APIs. Okay, it is again you need to combine this into one system API or anything that will purely depends upon your requirement. But in general, I am going to explain. If you have three different systems, the ideal way to implement a API-led connectivity is to have three different system APIs. Okay, let's say this is a Salesforce system API. One second. And this is SAP system API, and the third one is database system API. These three will come under system API layer, system layer. You can name it as system API, so that you will assume that these three will come under system layer. Okay, and we have, yeah, this is Salesforce, this is SAP, and this is database. And while deploying these, I mean, these three are three different APIs. It means these three are three different REST APIs, normal REST APIs. You will assume that. But you can name it as while deploying it into Cloud Hub or while deploying it, while creating this project, you can name it as uh, Salesforce System API, SAP System API, Database System API, Sys API or F API. Naming conventions again will differ from project to project or company to company. Okay, you will just name it as while deploying this application into your cloud hub, you need to append some suffix as SAPI or SYS API to identify this API as a system API. But in general, this is a normal REST API. Okay, so you can name it as Salesforce SAPI and SAP Sys API. SAPI Sys API both are same. Okay, the naming conventions, as I said, like it will depends upon your project or your company. Every company or every project or every client has their own naming conventions. Okay, so again, this is a database system API, DB hyphen sys API. So like that, you have these three system APIs, and your requirement, your business logic requirement is to have employee data. Let's assume that employee data resides in these three different APIs. Okay, like the personal details are there in Salesforce API, organization details like that particular employee company details are available in this SAP details, SAP system, or that employee salary details or credit card details, any bank details resides in database API. Let's assume that. Okay. So in that way, in your business logic is to get all the employee data combinedly together into a JSON format. Let's assume that is your requirement. So what you have to do, you have to first connect to these three systems individually and get the details of that employee in three different ways, and you need to combine these three different employee details into a single JSON format: personal details, organization details, and bank details. And you need to provide that complete employee data in a JSON format, and you need to send that JSON to your end user. That is your final output. So to implement that, we should have system APIs, process APIs, and experience APIs. Okay. See, uh, database, yes, API. Okay, these three are system API layer, and you will have one process API to integrate all this together and transform the data. So what you have to do, you need to invoke, you need to create this process API, and you need to invoke these three different system APIs into this process API. Let's name this process API as employee process API, employee PRC API. Again, this is another REST API. This is a normal REST API, but we just name it as employee process API to identify this is a process API. In here, the actual business logic resides. Okay. So you let's as discussed, Salesforce has personal details, bank organization details, bank details, complete employee details combined here by invoking these three different APIs into this REST API. How we can invoke this REST API? We already know how to invoke any REST API. You need to use HTTP request. Let's assume that this is your process API. You need to implement a flow, and you need to use this HTTP request connector, and here you need to invoke that system API like this. As you need to invoke three different system APIs, you need to have three different flows or any single flow. You need to have three different HTTP request connectors to invoke these three APIs into your process API. So let's assume that this is your process API. We have one REST connector here, HTTP request connector here. Like this, you need to have three different connectors. You need to provide the URL details and all, because these three are three different REST APIs, right? So we are going to deploy these three different APIs as a three applications into your runtime manager, your cloud hub. Salesforce sapi.cloudhub.com, SAP sysapi cloudhub.com, DB sysapi cloudhub.com. Likewise, we have three different applications deployed in Cloud Hub. So each and every application deployed in Cloud Hub have a specific URL, right? As we know earlier. So that URL you need to invoke here by using this REST API. I mean HTTP request connector. Likewise, you need to implement one REST API that you need to name it as a process API. You can invoke by all these system APIs by using HTTP requester, and you need to get all the employee details and transform here as per the client requirement, and provide a okay. So your business logic and actual output, actual response is there in your process API, but you should not provide this process API directly to your end user. So you need to create one experience API. You can name it as employee exp API, means employee experience API. So in this employee experience API, just invoke this process API. So your process API will send this employee details JSON as a response to your experience API, right? So again, this process API you need to invoke in experience API by using HTTP request. Don't get confused, okay? So in this process API, you are going to have three different connectors like this HTTP request, and you are going to invoke three APIs. You need to get the combined data and transformed it. You can send this as a JSON format. That's the process API implementation will be completed, and you need to deploy this process API into Cloud Hub. So once you deploy this API into Cloud Hub, you will generate one URL. That URL you need to invoke here in your experience API as a HTTP request connector. like this, because this process API is also again a REST API. So likewise, you need to invoke here. So this is your final output. This is your experience API, and this endpoint you are going to provide this endpoint to your end user. Which means once you implement this experience API, once you invoke this process API into this experience API, you need to deploy this experience API into Cloud Hub, where you will get one endpoint. Endpoint is nothing but the Cloud Hub URL, okay, with get or put method something. So for example, we deployed this application as emp exp API dot cloud hub dot io, because once you deploy any application to Cloud Hub, it will add one URL at the end of your API name, right? The region name and all. So cloudhub.io. So and you will get you have implemented this employee API by using EMPLOY, employee resource of REST API. And this is your HTTP URL. You need to make it as HTTPS URL by applying security in this experience API. So this is your endpoint, experience API endpoint. See, EXP API. This is your experience API endpoint. This endpoint you are going to give you are going to provide this URL to your end users or consumers. They will invoke this endpoint and they will get the details. So once they call your once the consumers call your experience API, what will happen? They will hit the API here, and this API internally invoke this process API and get the details. But before getting the details, this process API should invoke all these three system APIs to get the actual data, and again combines it. Response come here, and from here the response go to experience API, and from this experience API the response will go to your end client, the end user. Clear? I hope you understand this, and once you practice this, you will get more details. You will get better understanding once you practice this. Okay, let's say this is your end user. So once your end user will invoke your experience API. Experience API will invoke process API. Process API will invoke all these three system APIs. And once the response come from the system APIs, all the combined response it will process here. The business logic will implement here, and the response from process API will send to experience API, and from this experience API, the actual final response is going to send to your end user. So this is how the actual API-led connectivity will looks like. So what about the security now? So these system APIs and process APIs endpoints, for each and every API you have endpoint like this, but we are not going to you are not going to provide these system API process API endpoints to your end user. So you no need to bother about the security in these two layers. So this is process layer and this is system layer. So you don't need to bother about security in these two layers, at least for now, because these are internal to your organization. But you are going to expose this API to your end user. If any malfunctioning happen, any unauthorized user access your API, all your employee data will be at risk, right? So to avoid that, you need to apply security API, and you need to apply the required policies as per your project, and you need to apply the auth authentication or any other authentication to your application. And then once everything looks good all along with security, then you need to deliver this endpoint to your end user. Then your end user will invoke your endpoint ready to consume your API. Okay, so internally these three APIs will we can implement security in such a way, like we can at least implement SSL, two-way SSL or one-way SSL to make your API secure. Like that we can implement internal security for this two layers, but this experience layer is the most predominant one to in terms of security to make your data secure. So this is about API-led connectivity, and we'll try to have any real-time example with all these layers very soon. We will try to implement that, and we will try to create a separate video. I hope you understand the conceptual way of this API-led connectivity. So if you like our video, please like and subscribe, share our channel to your friends, And don't forget to subscribe because our records showing most of your non-subscribed users. Okay, so try to subscribe our channel and press the bell icon to get the notification. And thank you. See you soon.